Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News. Balitang thinking, hindi breaking. In this episode,
Saka nakakita na estudyante pa lang, may scholar na, hindi kailangan ng experience, pwede na mag-abroad. Saka nakakita na i-recruit ang estudyante natin ng nursing, doon na magtapos sa kanila para pag-graduate, nasa kanila na. Saka nakakita na yung na the supply of the best nurses to the world, walang nurses mismo na mag-aalaga sa kanila.
the Philippines, one of the world's top nursing providers, is irony of ironies, facing a nursing shortage. How did we get to this point?
The attrition rate in the government hospitals, including the private hospitals, has increased. In some private hospitals, quadrupled. From 2018 to 2022, the range of attrition, meaning those nurses who were already hired, have left their jobs.
That's Dr. Teresita Barcelo, former president of the Philippine Nurses Association. She was speaking at a forum hosted by the Kamuning Bakery Cafe earlier this month.
And this is something that we worry about because if you are losing, for example, in 2017, it's running from only 2017 before pandemic, it's running between zero, no attrition, to 6 to about 7%. But now, in 2022, we have a high of almost 16%, which is a big number. And in fact, in private hospitals, we got this data, that it is as high as 40%.
As a result, hospitals are having to make serious cuts to the number of their beds.
Some hospitals are already closing down their beds, which is what? Resulting to less access for quality care to our Filipino people. While we say we are the choice of the world, we're good, we're competent, why not first take care of our own people before we send them out?
To be clear, this shortage isn't because we lack Filipino nurses. It's because we keep losing Filipino nurses to more lucrative jobs overseas.
Maybe we think that the Philippines is a supplier of nursing practitioners for the world. Probably that's true. However, this thinking has created an artificial shortage in the Philippines. And if we don't address this is a very recent and serious problem. We may end up with no nursing service in the hospitals.
Filipino nurses pursuing better opportunities abroad is nothing new. But Dr. Carl Balita, a nurse educator and advocate, says poaching from recruiters in developed countries has intensified.
The country needs to push the panic button. We have to push the panic button because the feared unethical migration is in our midst. So we are being exploited as a very compassionate nation producing very caring nurses. We're exploited because, the attraction that they offer seems to be attractive, not because it's really attractive, but because it's converted to our peso equivalent.
As Dr. Carl mentioned at the beginning of this episode, plenty of our nursing students are recruited before they even graduate.
The WHO and the International Council of Nurses declared that it is unethical for developed countries to be siphoning and to be recruiting, poaching, we call nurses or professionals of developing countries like the Philippines, at the expense of its own human resource. That's a very clear policy of the WHO and the International Council of Nurses, but it's happening.
Dr. Carl adds that the weak peso is only making matters worse.
Ang malungkot, ang piso ay mahina, mataas ang conversion, kung kaya yung isang dolyar, pag i-convert mo, akala mo ang laki-laki, pero hindi na-realize ng iba, yung cost of their money din naman, pag ginastos sila doon, baka pareho rin lang.
But everything we've discussed so far is only half the problem. We, of course, have to talk about why our nurses are so eager to go abroad in the first place.
Sarado na po ang ibang mga floors at mga beds ng maraming hospital, lalong-lalo ng private hospitals. Not because we don't have the nurses, but because we're not, as a country and as a society, giving enough care and enough reasons for our nurses to stay.
Even if they don't go abroad, local competition is stiff. The Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines, Inc., or PAPI, says around 40 to 50% of nurses in private hospitals have resigned in the last 2 years. It's due in part to the government raising salaries for nurses in public hospitals, which now range from 30 to 40,000 pesos, higher than what some private hospitals offer. But many nurses in public hospitals are contractual workers. That means they don't have security of tenure or benefits, and their working conditions are often very poor.
Pansinin ninyo, sige gobyerno, government nurses mas mataas ang sweldo. Punta kayo sa ospital, i-cover nyo. Ilang nurse para sa maraming pasyente. 1:1. Ang nangyayari, 1:1. Ang ideal niyan is 1:10, 1:50, depende sa case.
Here's Dr. Teresita Barcelo again. She's a former Philippine Nurses Association president.
It's okay. I know that working abroad is a dream by many of us, but they also know that if they are being retained and given the recognition and the compensation that they deserve, retention, they will come. So the problem is not supply. The problem is really retention.
We'll pause here, but when we return, we look at what the government is doing to address the nursing crisis.
We are pushing the panic button because nurses see this situation that is not only here but it's worsening as the months come. But we are still in the middle of the pandemic. We don't know what's next. And the solution that they're trying to do is to allow lesser, eventually Dr. Barcelo, to allow the 2-year trained persons to take care of the bedside.
Dr. Carl Balita was referring to the substitution of board-certified nurses with nursing attendants who received 2 years of training under the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA. But advocates are opposing this government solution.
Very concretely, let me give an example. Ngayon magpa-opera ka, maghihintay ka ng araw dahil ba kailangan mo operahan ka agad, not because wala kang surgeon, but because wala kang OR nurses who can actually attend and assist as a good surgeon. Not every surgeon would want anybody to just assist them. It's not a simple procedure that you can imagine. Who will be the human resource in our emergency rooms, in our critical care unit? We're just probably thinking of regular ward na nag-aabot ng gamot, nagre-regulate ng IV fluids, o nag-aayos ng mama, o kumukuha ng vital signs. Kung gano'n lang pinag-usapan natin, maybe a layman can do that. But if we're talking of skills na pinag-aralan namin ng 4 na taon na itines sa amin sa board exam, you're talking of life and death here.
Here's Dr. Barcelo again, proposing a different approach.
If you look at the press releases of board examination results every year, you will notice that there are many who do not pass because the passing percentage can range between 45 to 60, which means there's a range, there's something like 55 to 40% who did not pass. But they are trained, they are BSN graduates. Why not tap this rich human resource already trained? They know already about how to care for patients, they know pharmacology, they know about the right ways to handle patients in the ICU.
She adds that, like nursing attendants, they'll have to be supervised by licensed professional nurses.
So to us, this is a welcome solution rather than coming up with a 2-year trained nurse. They call it nurse, or I don't know what they will call her, that person, through TESTA. I don't know about you, but I feel the quality might suffer. So we welcome this short-term solution, and we call it short-term because I am thinking that, or we are thinking that, this shortage will probably last for a while, for as long as we are not giving our nurses the appropriate attention or the appropriate benefits.
That brings us to long-term solutions. And for Dr. Carl Balita, none of the current proposals address the root cause of our nursing crisis.
I don't think we just have to address supply. Ang usual thinking ng traditional solution damihan ng scholarship, parami tayo ng mga nurses, taasan nyo na ang passing ng board exam para mas marami na maging nurses. Pero pag ginawa natin yan, marami tayong mapuproduce ng nurse para maraming makikot ng ibang bansa.
Ultimately, he says, the government needs to give nurses, and other professionals for that matter, more reasons to stay.
Tayo naman mga Pilipino, government, it's about time, bigyan naman natin ng tamang regard yung mga nurses. Maniwala kayo, magtanong kayo ng mga nurses Yung ibang nurses, hindi pa nila nakuha yung allowance nila ng pandemya. Tapos ngayon, mag-uusapan natin, gusto ba natin silang palayasin dahil magre-remit sila ng dollars? Hello! Ang offer nila is not jobs. And ang offer nila is migration. They are being offered not to work abroad, but to even live abroad with their families. So what happens to our investment? What happens to our people? I'm not saying the best left. No, some of the best are still here. But this government, our society will have to give us more reason to stay.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode is produced by Kat Ventura and edited by Mark Casillan. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. At para sa mga mahilig manood sa YouTube, Puma Podcast na rin po kami doon. Just search Puma Podcast and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for listening.